And we're back with a quick tutorial on Rimworld and dealing with infestations. This one here is a pretty decent sized infestation. Well, depending on the stage of the game you're on, it's 45 mega spiders, 45 stellipedes, and 34 of those little baby mega scarabs. What we're trying to do here is show how you deal with them, depending on the stage of the game you're at, the weapons you have, that type of thing. Now, later we'll cover how you actually try and prevent these from happening in the first place, if that's your intent. But we want to sort of show you how to deal with them as efficiently as possible if you do have to deal with them, or if you want to farm them for resources, because they can be quite useful. Now, one of the main questions is, what type of weapons should you use when you're using this type of setup? There's a lot of different suggestions out there, from auto shotguns to miniguns to heavy machine guns to, well, Molotovs and grenades. So what we want to do here is just sort of, well, narrow it down so that you know what's the best for what stage of the game you're at, because it's highly unlikely you're going to be able to equip all of your pawns with auto shotguns early on in the game. So what's the best weapon for the situation in this stage of the game is what we want to try and determine. As well as that, these people here, they're all equipped with just what they randomly had on them. This is a live colony, so I just grabbed up the closest pawns, threw them on here in the front line, and that's the whole thing dealt with. Now, you notice here everyone's got a few injuries on them on the front line, especially Sir White. They tanked a lot of that, mainly with their face, it looks like. So let's try a few weapons, two different weapon types here, and just equip everyone with a mono weapon and see how it works out. In this, we've got the 4 highest touch DPS weapons in the game, as listed by the wiki. We have the auto shotgun, the heavy SMG, the machine pistol, and the charge rifle, and that's the order they're listed in. However, in testing, that's not quite how it worked out. The testing here was all carried out at double speed, that's how the seconds worked out. So we got 47 seconds for the shotgun, which means it comes out well ahead of all the other contenders. That's not really a big surprise considering how well it's recommended for this, though I will admit the SMG being that close, it was kind of a bit of a shock. As well as that, you'll notice on the tiles there around the kill zones, you'll notice that the auto shotguns and the charge rifles have a tendency to chew up the surrounding walls very, very quickly. Yeah, like there's 4 tiles gone on both the auto shotguns and the charge rifle section. SMG has a tendency to preserve the surrounding environment a bit better, which is a lot handier. However, the machine pistols, despite being so highly rated for close damage, they don't have a lot of armor pierce, and all of these bugs, they all have a little bit of carapace armor at least, which makes the machine pistol just a little bit too weak sauce when it comes to this type of scenario. My advice, if you're facing off against bugs, maybe just leave the machine pistol behind. In this scenario, we're just testing 4 of the other guns I thought would be interesting to try out. The assault rifle, because it's pretty much ubiquitous and very easy to get your hands on, especially like early mid-game. The LMG, because I've never really had a chance to use it very much. The minigun, of course, because it really is quite a fun gun to play around with, and the pump shotgun because I have never ever had a chance to use them. Like, the moment I get any other gun I usually upgrade, and that would appear to be a good choice. The machine pistol does better than the pump shotgun in this scenario. You'd think the pump shotgun, this is literally a scenario designed for shotguns, and no, the pump shotgun is still worse than the machine pistol. If you have a choice between a pump shotgun and a machine pistol, take the machine pistol. The assault rifles do pretty well, and they manage to preserve most of the surrounding wall segments pretty good. However, 65 seconds is not too respectable. LMG, same problem. It's basically a weaker version of the minigun. And the minigun, while it does shred the walls into pieces, draws with the assault shotguns at 47 seconds. That's actually really, really impressive. I was not expecting the minigun to perform so well, especially with the stats that are available on the wiki. It just seemed unlikely, but it just seems a target-rich environment like this, the minigun just comes into its own. In fact, the minigun, despite being maligned a lot, quite a good weapon, whatever way you slice it. In this scenario, we introduce grenades. They really, really help cut down on the difficulty with dealing with infestations by a huge margin. Now, the only thing you really need to know about them for now is they have a potential enforced miss radius of 1, meaning you want to aim right here. That way, if you miss by a bit, you'll only hit one of these surrounding tiles, which means you still won't hit your own walls. And then what you do is you activate that, we'll send in the bugs, and the bugs will come charging at us as so. Now, what's going to happen here that really helps us is these explosions also stun the bugs. It basically staggers them and slows them down. That means the bugs trying to get in here to attack our melee pawns get slowed down. There's whole seconds here where our melee people are doing nothing, where they don't have to attack. And that means they have time to sort of rearm, so to speak. So when the bugs do finally reach the front line, they get it triple whammied instantly. Throw in the auto shotguns everyone is equipped with, and this results in quite a nasty massacre quite quickly. All of the bugs just get absolutely slaughtered. Oh, Sir White went down. That's not really a good sign. By and large, though, this is never a good indicator. Bugs can bounce off your armor, do whatever. So trying to indicate this directly by pawns going down and injuries, I've tried. It's it's too much of a random roll of the dice. We've managed to get our kill time down to, what, 37 seconds? That's actually pretty good. It's knocked 10 seconds off the 47, so putting us in the lead. However, let's do, before I show you a slightly different version using a more grenade-heavy oriented version, we're going to have to figure out exactly how the mechanics of grenades work. Right here we have two sets of grenadiers. One of them is set to fire to that location over there, which means they'll hit in that spot and they have the potential to hit any one spot around it. So this just means that no matter where they throw it, see, it's up there in the top left, they can't actually damage any of the surrounding walls because they're not going to be able to hit any. There's just an enforced miss radius of 1 on them. Then down here we've got a second one. They're throwing at a much closer distance to about there, and you'll see the same thing. They've an enforced miss radius, but they won't actually damage any of the walls because they can only miss by 1. Doesn't matter how far or how close they throw it, enforced miss radius is 1, meaning the maximum miss you can get is 1, which is great. However, there's a few things that start making this more complicated. The first is if you start extending the walls any distance. When it comes to throwing grenades, they can throw them quite happily for a distance of 4 tiles. 1, 2, 3, 4, and they won't clip any walls on the side, meaning you can have them in a 1 tile wide tunnel and they're just fine. However, if we start, say, increasing this like so, and we'll just put them back to firing, what'll happen is, yeah, see, that grenade clipped off the wall and stuck there. Despite the fact it's only got a 1 tile miss radius, when you start throwing them down a narrow corridor, they will have a tendency to start clipping the walls. So, yeah, now you've just messed up your whole system. So yes, whatever you do, just make sure that you don't make them fire down a corridor that's more than 4 tiles long. Now, how this relates to over here when we were dealing with our bugs is, well, we can't fire the grenades too far because we'll end up clipping off the walls on the side. But there's some modifications we can make to take advantage of it. But a couple of other things to note. One is this dupe here has, trigger happy, which means they fire 50% faster. Well, they aim 50% fire. Aim 50% faster. And what this works out as is they actually fire 6 grenades in the time it takes a regular pawn to fire 5. So you having someone who's trigger happy with grenades, very good. If you're going to use grenades, give it to someone who's trigger happy. Do not, however, give it to someone who's got the opposite trait, careful shooter. Careful shooter will just slow down how quickly they fire, and you get no bonus. Remember, there's an enforced miss radius here. Also, when it comes to extending the corridor on, if you have someone who is a careful shooter and has very high shooting skill, they'll be less likely to clip the walls. They will be less likely to clip the walls, but they still will do it. It's just the way the numbers work out. So even with 20 in shooting and a careful shooter, they'll still clip the walls, which means you can't go beyond that point reliably. You can reduce the shooting skill on this person down to 0 and give them trigger happy, and still they're going to clip the walls, but they won't clip it any closer than here, which means you've got 4 tiles you can definitely work with. Using all the knowledge we have picked up, what we do is we just set up 2 grenadiers this time. Both of them are set to fire right here, but we have narrowed the walls down a little bit. The reason being, this grenadier here, the one in the back line, if we tried to have 3 wall segments and have them aim here, they would clip the walls on the side. The reason being it's 1, 2, 3, 4, so they can aim 4 tiles safely. If there was another wall segment right here, what would happen is they would occasionally throw a grenade into that wall and start damaging our own walls. By trimming it down to 2 wall segments, though, we're able to get away with this. And in this scenario, well, you know what? Let's just fire it up and you'll see. I have also made sure that one of them here is trigger happy, so they fire their grenades faster than normal, and the other one is just normal because, well, you know, I don't want to go too overboard here. But that means that the grenades end up sort of staggering. They'll end up occasionally overlapping, but by and large they won't hit at the same time, which gives us more of a nice stun hit on top of them. They slice through the enemies so quickly, it is absolutely ludicrous. Just insane. Now, one downside to doing it this way is you will end up occasionally, well, incinerating all the corpses. You're basically throwing down grenades and the explosions will constantly keep destroying the corpses. Is a downside. You don't get as much resources out of it, unfortunately. But this would probably be my preferred setup. Oh, wow, Sir White went down again. What happened? How? That was like 27 seconds of fighting and testing. Never mind. At 27 seconds, the auto shotguns plus grenades will do an absolutely monstrous job, but you don't need to be that well equipped. Same scenario again, only this time we're using machine pistols. Reason being, machine pistols have been the worst so far. Well, not the worst. The pump shotgun was actually worse than them by about 3 seconds. But they came in at 69 seconds before. We throw in, though, a couple of grenades, leave everything else the same, and suddenly they drop down to 30 seconds. As in, you could upgrade all of your pawns to auto shotguns, but just equipping a couple of them with grenades does more. And the great thing about grenades is they're cheap. So you can become a better class at bug hunter by just throwing a couple of grenades onto your bug hunting squads, and you're done. You can slaughter through them. And look, we didn't even scratch the walls that badly. Those granite walls, we'll get some people out there to repair them. And this has been an almost a zero loss just to take care of a massive infestation. And Sir White is standing this time for some reason. Do be aware, though, here, when you're shooting through people, these pawns can shoot over the shoulders of two people. So this pawn here can handily shoot over these two people's shoulders without hitting them. Unfortunately, they may hit this one, which is why we give them shield belts. Yes, all the people in the front line get shield belts, and that's why I normally go with this sort of box formation. You can put a fourth row or a fifth row back here, and usually I don't get any damage to my frontline people, but it can happen. It depends really how massive the infestation is, but realistically, this could take care of like enormous infestations. The bigger it gets, though, you might want to get tougher walls, maybe throw in plasteel or something like that. Early game, when you don't have access to, you haven't walled in your entire base with a wall the entire way around, you can just wait a day and build yourself a little enclosure. You don't have to have them like this. You could just, of course, build yourself an enclosure for your pawns, wall it in, and then lure the enemy in. To lure the enemy in, send one pawn out with a gun and get them to shoot at the enemies. You do have to keep tagging them. If it's a really long distance, they will lose interest in chasing you, so you're going to have to occasionally keep tagging them to draw them all the way out. Now, assuming you've bothered to kill them all, next up, it's harvesting time. Once the infestation is dealt with, get everyone who's not injured or close to a mental break and immediately send them in to start wiping out the nests. The reason being these nests will keep spawning, and believe me, if you leave it for a few days, you're suddenly going to have to deal with another infestation, which can be a little bit of an annoyance. Now, I believe they patched this recently so that they actually auto-target nests, so you can just sort of run them in and they will just start shooting at anything around them. They don't tend to target the closest, unfortunately, which is a bit of an annoyance, so you're going to have to run around and manually get a few people in. It depends how bad the caves are. As you kill these nests, they'll actually drop more insect jelly. Now, all the insect jelly is X'd out by default, and that's really a good thing. You don't want your haulers suddenly running in here to pick it up, only to find that some of these bugs have spawned. Every so often, they actually pop out a bug. However, if you keep killing all the bugs that pop out, eventually they will degrade and just sort of disappear, though that does take a while. You're better off just going in, annihilating a lot of it, and making sure all of the insect jelly is done for. Once that's done, let's group everyone up here. You need to add all this insect jelly to a zone, so we'll just drag a zone out here. Once you have all the insect jelly in it, maybe just make sure that you set it to an extremely low priority. So I've cleared it all, and the only thing allowed in this is insect jelly. And then what we're going to do is we are going to untag all of these, and then we're going to go out to the world map and start making ourselves a caravan. Then out here we form a caravan and select all of the pawns that are involved in are currently in the tunnels. I just take a screenshot with the Windows, was it Shift Windows and S? It allows me to just grab a quick snapshot, and then I just use that picture to remember the names. There should be a simpler way, but there isn't. And we'll just grab all of that and add that into the caravan. Choose route, has no idea. It doesn't make a difference anywhere at all. Accept, confirm, yep. Everyone pick it all up. Now, they should go around and they should start collecting all of that lovely, lovely, lovely jelly. The reason we want to collect this all so quickly is this jelly will go off very, very, very quickly. So we need to have it moved to storage as quickly as possible. Come on, grab it all, grab it all, grab it all. And last one has grabbed it. Perfect. Then we take all of them and we remove them from the caravan. So now what they'll do is they'll run straight back to base. And you'll see they're running all the way back in here. I've set up a storage area. Insect jelly will go off, so put it in a refrigerated area if at all possible, and that's it. You've managed to make yourselves an enormous amount of money. What is that? A too deep infestation? Oh, never mind. Right, I'll go take care of this, but let's have a quick look and see how much jelly we got out of this and how much money it's worth. Since the caravan was cancelled, I've dropped everything off in storage. I set this up as preferred so we can see, and we managed to pull in about 2,440. Using the debug tool, I just magicked us in a bulk goods trader. Well, just any trader will do. And then what we can do is we can go in here and sell our insect jelly for 12,280. That's how much it's worth. You can make an enormous amount of cash harvesting the insect jelly. As well as that, all of this down here, this can all be collected as well. At the same time, you can just sort of go in here, make sure they're all allowed. And then normally what I do is I either I combine it with hay to make kibble, or I just turn it directly into chem fuel. One or the other. It depends what kind of playthrough you're running. But the corpses are worth something, and the insect jelly is worth something, so there's no reason not to harvest it. However, if you do want to avoid infestations, there's a few things you can do, especially if you're doing a mountain base. First and simplest thing to realize is you need to look for overhead mountain. For example, you'll see here this is overhead mountain. It comes in this especially dark greenish color. I don't know. People have different names for that color, but I'm going to call it darkish green for this purposes. This darkish green color is overhead mountain, and you can see in here that I've walled in pretty much every area that's covered like there. Yep, yeah, you don't want that out in the open. There's more overhead mountain. Infestations can spawn under any overhead mountain section, so long as the temperature is above minus 17 degrees. So you'll notice here, this entire area of refrigeration units is all below 17 degrees. This is to ensure that we don't get any infestation spawning here, because that would be very uncomfortable. I'd hate to have to start tossing grenades in there. It would be rather messy. Now, you'll see that all the tunnels out here are all different colors. But what we have over here is what's called a little bit of a honeypot. The reason this is a honeypot is this is all overhead mountain, and at the same time, it's been heated up. I've thrown a heater in here specifically for this purpose to make sure that it's a good place for infestations to spawn. Now let's grab up the map. There is a debug tool you can use here to draw infestation chance. Then when you come back out, the game is going to be very chuggish. Very, very chuggish. And this here, the darker the blue, the more likely the infestation chance is for a spawning event to happen. If we grab open the overview there, we can check the temperatures in this section. Temperatures are -6. Now, a few things to realize about this. This infestation chance is... if, let's say, there was only one overhead mountain tile in the entire map that was -16 degrees below zero, and that was the only tile that had overhead mountain and was above -17, and an infestation had the chance to spawn, it would 100% spawn in that tile. It would have no other choice. So while you can, say, reduce the temperature of, say, these rooms down to -15, and that would mean these places would be much warmer and more likely to spawn here, it can still spawn in there. The map effectively looks at all the areas that it can possibly spawn in and then picks one at random based on percentage chance. So you really, if you want to 100% ensure you never get an infestation, keep your overhead mountains below -17, which is expensive in terms of cooling. At the same time, you can do honeypots like that are down here, but this one doesn't seem to be activating very much. The other thing that is necessary for an infestation to spawn is there needs to be some sort of building or something you made beside it. So wall tiles like these that I've used to wall in this whole area, they're what's helping make sure that it triggers in here. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to turn off that infestation spawn because it makes the game so slow when it draws in those chances. So that's how you determine whether or not you're going to get infestations. So good idea, make yourself a honeypot. The reason this honeypot is here is to do with an accident that happened in an earlier playthrough. This map set, it actually only has about half the year is a growing period, the other half is winter. So outside at the moment it is -21 degrees. Yeah, it's chilly outside. So all of the mountain tiles outside have no chance of spawning an infestation. However, if we go inside here and we check these here tiles, you'll see, look, -22, -22, 21. These all look perfect. So why do we have an infestation spawning? Well, it's to do with this tile right here, this one. This tile has overhead mountain, and it is -15 degrees. This is the only tile on the entire map that has overhead mountain and is above -17. Therefore, the infestation had to spawn here. It had no choice, just from the way the maths works out. So that means this infestation is going to spawn in here. Now, excuse me while I get some pawns out of the way. All right, so bearing in mind that this was just a complete accident and I did not... there should have been no chance of an infestation spawning here. This is what happens when you mess up. There's 103 mega spiders that spawned right in the middle of your base, all because of this one tile here. That's it. This is what can happen. So be incredibly careful if you're building under mountains. These infestations will only happen once every year and a half, maybe a little bit less. But if you have to deal with something like this spawning in the middle of your mountain base all the time, yeah, it's going to be quite expensive. Even if you set up kill traps and you segment off rooms and make sure you have ways to get out of it, dealing with this much of infestation every so often is crippling. I barely survived this. It was basically a fire that killed them all. Another way of killing them is to use fire. They'll eventually attack this chem reactor and blow themselves up. They eventually burn themselves down. But this does lose me all of my infrastructure, advanced components, all that stuff. It's incredibly expensive. So my advice, be very careful with infestations. And if you're going to build under mountains, then you best make sure you have a handy supply of grenades. Next up, fire. Because fire is always a popular method of destroying these. Especially when it's early in the game and you're down on weapons or pawns or you just don't have a lot of options. Simplest thing you can do is just throw down some tables, some wooden floors, and then try and incinerate them. However, there's a few things you're going to need to worry about. Nope, just right about there. Perfect, and then we'll close the doors behind us. First, you need some sort of way of sealing them in. You can't just, start a fire out in the open. For example, out here is the outside world. say outdoors. You can see it down there in the bottom right of the screen. It says outdoor -19. It doesn't matter how much heat you put into the outdoors. Nothing will happen. You need a sealed room. So this is sealed off because these walls have been put in here. And then what you can see is the temperature in here is slowly starting to go up. Well, not so slowly actually. Damn, that is actually getting... You can see it up there, 90, 100. The temperature is going up. However, this starts to drive the bugs a little bit crazy. They're going to start attacking the walls and doing things that are... unpleasant. However, once the temperature gets high enough, and by high enough I mean 200 and I think it's 250 C. Yep, they've lost it. Once it goes above, what is it? I think, is it 200? Once it goes above a certain amount, they realize that this is an attack, and then they just go nuts. They start attacking everywhere and anything. But we don't care, so long as they all die of heat stroke. The problem might be is if they might break through a wall, say, over here, or over here, they could potentially break through, equalizing the pressure with the outside world, at which point this stops being a furnace and they just have a normal life. Are we almost done yet? Not quite. As you can see here, their heat stroke is progressing. Eventually they'll all pass out, and then because the temperature in here is above 250 C, it needs to be higher than 250 C, or is it 240? 250 C. Things start spontaneously bursting into flames. So bodies, hives, insect jelly, all of that stuff starts to burn. Now, you're not going in here. Well, you theoretically could, but you'd have to open the doors. Even if you open the doors, the heat doesn't rush out. Actually, let's demonstrate that now. Doors are a bit funny. They don't... It's not like... If you open a door, it's not like you've suddenly just exposed the room to the outside world. It does allow heat to pass through, but not instantly. As in, the temperature in here is still 500... It's still going up. Namely because even more things have gone on fire and even more things are starting to burn. Now, this is an efficient and cheap way of getting rid of a lot of bugs, but you don't get any money out of it, unfortunately. And it does cost you a bunch of tables or whatever you use to incinerate the place. Usually tables and wooden floors are a good choice, or wooden shelves with wood on them, also another good choice that's much more compact. Some closing notes on dealing with bugs. And, well, a bit of a summation of the whole thing in general. You don't need to go too overboard. You don't need a lot of exotic weaponry. Some cheap grenades will take care of most large, enormous infestations if needs be. When you're dealing with smaller infestations, you have smaller numbers of pawns. You can get away with just having one blocker. Sir White was pretty much my main blocker who face tanked God knows how many insect infestations at the start. Just make sure that you give your best armor to the person up front because they are the one who's going to take the pounding. Also, as well as that, if you only have one blocker, make sure the person behind them is ready to slot into place just in case the person up front falls. You want to make sure that your shooters are at least one tile removed so they don't accidentally start using the butts of their guns on things. Their main source of damage is them shooting. But the incredibly important thing is keep your grenadiers safe. They're the ones that are going to do the bulk of the damage if you're doing it right. I one time had the very bright idea to use Molotovs. My thinking being Molotovs would set them on fire and it would result into me having less difficulties to worry about because, they'd be running around confused and on fire. Technically, it kind of worked a little bit. One of the downsides of having all that fire is the bugs tend to actually start running through your people and coming out the other side. And then you have bugs out the other side that occasionally stop being on fire and then they start attacking your people. As you can see, it's just taking forever. People are on fire. Sir White is down. Yeah, I thought this was going to be a smart plan when I did it the first time. Oh, look, a bug actually managed to run all the way through. This just results in death. Do not use Molotovs in this scenario. Stick with grenades. Ugh. Infestations get a bad rap, but by and large, from what I can see, assuming you have a decent setup, they can actually be a really valuable source of resources. Farming them is totally worth it. Now, some people will say you can go in and steal their insect jelly at night and do that. Yeah, there's people who say you can do that, and then there's people who've actually done it. You don't want to try that, because if you mess up your timing, you have pawns in the middle of surrounded by insects trying to harvest jelly when they wake up. It doesn't go well. The moment an infestation spawns, you need to get around to killing it in the next day or two. If you've left it longer than a week, it'll probably get out of control, and it might be too big for your colony to handle. So definitely get around to dealing with them sooner rather than later. But if you do, very valuable resources can be obtained. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed and good luck.